We met the first time in 2014, and I think it was, I don't know whether you just started or you weren't that long back then. And I've watched what you did, and the only thing you did, like career-wise, was climb up. There's only Mike and Scott left. They'll hand over everything to you, probably the day after tomorrow. Congratulations for this stellar career.
Thank you so much. Cool. Yes, indeed. We met in 2014 when I just joined Atlassian. I think it was my very first summit. We used to call Team Summit. Many of you know. I see a lot of familiar faces here. And I remember meeting you very vividly for the first time. I was blown away. I was like, wow, this guy is talking at like 100 words a minute. And he's saying what's on his mind. Yeah, so it was, it's definitely a vivid memory for me meeting you for the first time.
I have 3 girls, and I want so hard for them to know some tech stuff. And so that would be that kind of my first question. My wife always tells me, you're rubbing them the wrong way. Like, I don't know how you need to do it, but you need to do it differently. Maybe you can give the others. Is anyone having children, female children in this room? Okay, so for all of these hands, what excited you about tech? And how came it?
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad there's a lot of parents of girls here, and it's also heartwarming to see more and more women in technology each year. I think it's an important thing that we have, especially because it's not just about diversity of gender, or it's not talking the talk about diversity, but over 20 years I've experienced how having diverse teams really has an impact on the results and outcomes you produce. But back to your question, my personal journey, I was born and brought up in Bangalore in India before it was a tech hub. Now it's known as a tech hub in India, but back in the 80s when I was growing up, it was known for its gardens, not really big on tech. My parents never really pushed me in any particular direction. They were very much, find out what you love, and whatever you do, commit to it. Do not half-ass it. That was pretty much the TLDR. And growing up, I was very interested in a variety of different things, but my parents were very rational thinkers and atheists, and I thought, cool, the biggest way to rebel would be to go become extremely religious. So I said, I want to take up theology, and I want to be a theologist. My parents said, okay, cool, if that's what you want, but do a good job of it. So I studied the scriptures, spent a lot of my time as a 10, 11-year-old. So I kind of started early. I'm a nerd. I like to read a lot. And after a couple of years of that, I didn't really get a reaction from my parents. So I was like, oh, this rebellion's not quite working. Maybe I should go off and do something else. And I was always...
iteration, the agile part of it.
Exactly. Yeah. I was always interested in physics and math, and I got into a degree program for astrophysics, because I was very fascinated by existential questions and learning about astronomy and stuff. But I joined the first year of college. I actually got admitted, and then I was like, oh shit, but this is a residential program. It means I have to stay away from my family. And that was a deal breaker for me. It sounds a bit stupid in hindsight, like you knew you were getting into this program, it was going to be residential, but the attachment ran so deep for me that I really wanted to stay with my family as I went through college, which is an unusual thing in most parts of the world, but very common in India. So I came back, and at that point of time, I thought about, okay, what do I really want to do? And QBasic, I'd just been introduced to Quick Basic. I don't know if many people in the room remember this. It was this game of gorillas throwing bananas, and you had to compute the angle and trajectory. I thought this was the greatest thing ever. So I used to write video games, play video games. It never struck me that that was a career choice, though. I always thought this is for fun, right? But when I came back, I had to switch degrees from astrophysics to something else. I chose computer science because that was actually an option, and I thought, oh, cool, maybe I can find a job if I do computer science degree. And straight out of college, Microsoft hired me to write video games, at which point of time I was like, holy shit, this is a real job? I would do this for free. Who knew this was a career? So that's kind of how I got initiated into computer science and tech.
I'm going to give a talk on checklists later. There's no checklist that comes out of that, but it's really, I'm hoping for my kids and your kids that they'll be able to be inspired by that and follow a little bit at least. Cool. There's so many things. In preparation of this, we had a long list of things, and then we cut out, and I fear that I won't be able to use the time wisely, but hopefully some inspiration for you will come out as well. But could you hand me some water before we...
Sure.
Thanks. Oh, that's very nice. Thanks.
I can ask my own questions, give my own answers if you feel. Oh.
Yeah, that's an idea. Why did I prepare? So, Seibert Media is about to expand to the US. We have 10 people here now, and there's a lot of difficulties when people aren't in the same time zone anymore. Also, we're like 300 people right now. You're 8,000, or is it even more?
10,000.
10,000, yeah, okay. Small difference. I would love to hear a little bit about, in your leadership position, what do you experience with those time zone difference, with growing that much, that you can give all these people that are growing as well dramatically? What can we do to master this? What has Atlassian done that was successful? We don't care about the stuff that didn't work.
Maybe I'll tell you a couple of things that didn't work too, because so you can avoid those mistakes. When I joined Atlassian, we were maybe 500, 600 people, if I remember correctly, and we went to 10,000. And so we've gone through a few turns of scale. Right? But personally, to your question of how I experience this and how leadership changes, it's an entirely different company as you go through these different points in time. You must have all heard the whole 10 people, 50 people, 100 people, 500,000. It kind of keeps changing. The character keeps changing as you go through some of those milestones. Throw in the fact that in March 2020, we made a decision to go fully distributed as a company. We had teams. We had acquired Trello, which was a fully remote team, and a couple of teams that had chosen to be fully remote and fully distributed. But in March 2020, we looked at it and we said, hey, we've actually been thinking about how to be more distributed. Now's a good chance. Let's lean in instead of lean out. And went to being fully distributed. What does that mean? It means we have some physical offices all over, and people do still come in, but we have a zero mandate for in-office working hours. And over 40% of Atlassians now live more than 2 hours away from an office, which means they're not coming in every day.
Do you lure them in? Do you provide good food or something like that? We're trying to do that. We have a professional kitchen. We have 2 cooks. People come in to eat, and then they go home again.
Yeah.
And it's meant to be that way. It's not, they can stay all day, but my brother who constructed all this, he says the office is a place for people to mingle. It's a social thing.
Yeah.
So does Atlassian try to lure people in? I know, if you're 5 hours away, there's no luring. That's impossible.
So we don't try to lure people into the office. In fact, we consciously try not to do that. The thing that we have done, in fact, early 2020, all of the exec team, we had a mandate to not go into the office more than once a month, right? Because that would create implicit pressure for people to come in if senior leadership is coming in and teams look at us and think, oh, I have to be visible in front of them. Why did we do that? Because fundamentally our belief is that you don't have to lure people, you don't have to force them to come into a physical space to do work. However, there are certain kinds of activities, creative collaboration, brainstorming, whiteboarding, those kinds of things, which are just helpful to do in person. And more importantly, just building social bonds, right? For a lot of us at Atlassian, we have long tenures. Like many of you, you've been with us for a long time. It's easy to build those relationships in person, and they accrue over time. It compounds over time. But for new people who come in, creating that sense of belongingness, purpose, it's hard to do remotely. So one thing that we've done that has worked for us is what we call intentional togetherness. What we do is make sure that teams of people. So when I say teams, it's not reporting structure, org hierarchy, like not me and my directs specifically, but teams of people who work on products together, who work on projects together. We bring them together in person. It doesn't have to be in an office. Like I went to Utah recently to do some talk, and there were 33 Atlassians. We just met for dinner, and we spent a few hours chatting with each other.
That's this 50% rule. Can you talk about this? I heard in your public talks, and it's super interesting. Like there's a remote team, and they mingle, and then you mandate 50% to be social, right?
So when we do the intentional togetherness events, we mandate that spend at least half the time building relationships and building bonds, because it's easy to overlook that and get straight to work, get straight to the collaboration part of it. But if without the relationships, that foundation is not there. So it can feel very much like, oh, that's just a soft thing, or that's a weird thing to say. What do you mean by mandating social time? But that's really the foundation for collaboration, for teamwork. And we're a teamwork company, so we're very insistent that, hey, build the foundation first, and on top of that, it's natural for work to flow. So intentional togetherness events are one tactic. Another tactic we use is halos. Because we were already pretty distributed, the two founders, Mike and Scott, are in Australia, but the rest of the exec team is here on the West Coast, and now we're spread all over. We used to be in San Francisco. What we do is we make sure that when we construct teams, there is at least 4 hours of overlap, 4 working hours. So someone on the East Coast working with somebody in Australia is not a good idea. So we typically tend to draw circles. That's why we call halos on the map. And we say, whoever can have 4 hours of overlap, that constitutes a team. So if you want to hire a designer in the East Coast and you are a developer in the West Coast, it's okay. But if you are a PM in Australia, don't try and hire the East Coast person, because the thing that we learned the hard way is initially we didn't mandate that, and people come and say, hey, I'll work evenings, I'll flex it, I will make this work. It doesn't work in the long run.
Yeah.
It's okay for like 2-3 months, but people either burn out or get frustrated. So that's something.
That was a big learning for me when I watched these videos, talking about this Halo thing. That's very operational, right? You can see like how many overlap do I have in a regular day, and do they fit or don't they?
Yeah.
And if you're not only 3 people, then you probably have the flexibility to say, okay, how about you go with him because that's more of your time zone. Yeah, very cool. Last, or one general question, like there's a specific economic climate right now with like a lot of big things changing. I've been in business for 25 years, and I didn't experience COVID. I didn't experience like this intensive war period that we have right now. How can Atlassian tools help customers today in this disruptive time? Like AI around the corner. Sharif was telling me yesterday how all BI products may have a problem when Google Bart or someone can answer all the questions about all my data. And how do you help as Atlassian with your tool suite?
Yeah, that's a good question. So how can Atlassian help other businesses?
So there's a set of awesome products.
Yeah.
How can I use them to survive these disruptions? So everyone has to be remote right now because there's a pandemic. Now there's a war and I don't get these parts from Ukraine that I got every day. And I'm about like, let's see what you say.
Yeah.
I have something in mind.
Sure. So from a customer perspective, the thing that I hear a lot, I speak to at least one enterprise customer every week, and overall, the summation of that, if I had to see trends that show up, are people are trying to do a lot more with less now, because we just exited like this 20-year bull run market, and now there is a focus on profitability alongside of growth. There's a lot of questions being asked about, hey, how can I do more with less, and how can I optimize what I currently have, which is a different question than what customers were asking, let's say 3 years ago, with the explosion of SaaS apps happening. Atlassian's situated in a very unique place, as you all know, because you work with customers day in and day out, in a unique place where we can actually help customers consolidate, right? A lot of times when I talk to customers, like there was a bank I was talking to that had 23 different work management tools. And it was because it's kind of bring your own app. The sprawl has now become so much that it's really hard for them to figure out, okay, where am I spending money and on what? And how can I actually get a handle on this? For that, Atlassian's really beneficial because the unique place that we operate is connecting developer and operational teams. And with work management, we connect a lot more of the non-technical teams than most admins are aware. I'm sure you've seen this in your day-to-day customer interaction, right? So how do you consolidate on the Atlassian platform while retaining tool choice? Most other suite vendors basically lock you in and make sure that their products work well, but they don't interoperate well with other third parties. Whereas for this moment in the market right now, where customers are trying to figure out, should I consolidate? And if I consolidate it, to what extent? It's not a binary decision. There we are positioned really well because of the overall open toolchain philosophy and having the Atlassian platform, long run, all of that. That's one. A second one is just the rate of change. Like the AI thing that Sharif was telling about, look, that as a technological evolution, it's the fastest I have seen in my lifetime. And I'm sure it's true for many of you, right? I can't think of any other technology evolution that's happening at that rate. Like you blink and you miss something, and every week things change. And a lot of customers see that.
Are you frightened as Atlassian or as Anu?
So for AI, I would characterize it as it is mildly scary from an overall technology perspective as to what it means for humanity, what it means for technology, all of that, because I don't think anyone fully understands the implications yet. But much more, an order of magnitude more exciting. Because the kind of things we can do today, boy, we couldn't even imagine doing that 2-3 years ago, right? So teamwork, Atlassian as a company, our mission is teamwork, right? It's very durable. As long as there is humanity, there is teamwork. So for us, AI is actually an enabler. So we think of it as it's expansionary for our business, it's expansionary for our customers. It's a great chance for us to think about how does teamwork play out in a world where there are human beings and there are AI-powered virtual teammates? What evolution will collaboration take in that form, in that world? But going back to your question, customers should really be thinking hard about what does this transformation mean for their own businesses. And where Atlassian can help is we've always tried to be a few steps ahead where we live the transformation ourselves, like we did that with cloud, we did that with platform, and then we bring that to customers to help them make sense of how to embrace that technology trend.
The extensibility of your products is, in my opinion, a big strength if you compare it to other ecosystems or platforms.
Yeah.
Do you think Google and Microsoft will ever catch up?
Catch up with?
Yeah, like we're so strong in here.
Yeah.
Will they ever be able to, at least when I'm talking to customers,
yeah,
they love with Atlassian that everything ties in easily.
Yeah.
So there's an app for every other SaaS app that I have that will tie into Jira or Confluence.
Yeah.
And that's not the case with
That's true.
Google Workspace or with Microsoft Tools.
Yeah,
And,
I would reframe.
are they catching up, or
Yeah.
is it that just like a strength that you keep and?
Yeah, I would reframe that more as I worked with Microsoft for 10 years before Atlassian, so I can kind of see the problem from both sides. At Microsoft, the philosophy is very much the suite philosophy, right? Because they want you to buy everything from one vendor, and they want you to use all products together. At Atlassian, our philosophy is not that. At Atlassian, our philosophy is very much, we want you to use the best tool, and what we try to do is to make the best tool for every use case. Mm-hmm. And we strongly believe that, look, SaaS apps, if you look over the last few years, it started with an average enterprise was using like 3 SaaS apps at the very beginning of the cloud transformation. And now on average, if you read the Okta report, it's something like 253 for every enterprise app. So we don't believe in a world where we're saying Atlassian is the only vendor you ever have to buy anything from, which is exactly why from first principles, we make sure everything is extensible. The way we build products ourselves is very much that treat yourself like a third party and build the product with just APIs available so that outside people can plug in. We expect that to very much be a sustainable differentiator. It's not easy to change those business models, right? Especially in large companies. So at Atlassian, we want to make sure that continues to be a sustainable differentiator, and therefore extensibility, partners, all of that is a crucial element of our business model to succeed.
That's the cool thing about a cool interview partner. You pose a bad question and they give a good answer nevertheless, just by just reframing the question. If you have a question, maybe you can speak up. I'll have a very specific one as my last. Let's assume you were a marketplace vendor, an Atlassian marketplace vendor, and you launched a new product. Would it be a paid or a free app?
Oh, cool. So it's a popular question, it appears. If I launched an app on the marketplace, I think it would depend on what my app does, and I can explain when it would be free and when it would be paid. If I were going for volume, for example, a lot of Atlassian products you see, we basically go for low price, high volume. In cases where you have to seed and establish use cases being rapidly adopted, rapidly spread, it's useful to start with free because you want to reduce the friction down to zero. You want to reduce the barrier down to zero, grab as many customers as you can with the widest possible use case set.
And you get a lot of learning as well, right?
Right, exactly, yeah. And you maximize the surface area of learning. But if you're building an app for a niche audience, which is also valuable, right? It's because you can charge a high price point if you solved a specific problem for a specific audience. That's also a great business. It's a high price, low volume business. At that point of time, I think it's useful to try out the model of start at a price point to evaluate willingness to pay rather than give it away for free, because then you get a lot of false positives if you give that away for free. Mm-hmm. So then I think it's worthwhile to take a little bit of time and do some WTP, willingness to pay surveys sort of thing, and start with a price point and make it paid from the very beginning. So
cool.
Depending on the app, I would
Let me try to paraphrase that. If my target group is very big, free is good because I'll grow. If my target group is small and niche, getting the right price point and not having false positives is more important.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, I think that's a reasonable simplification.
I learned something. Hopefully you got something out of that. Is there a question in the audience? I'm very sorry, I have a timer that is almost up, but I think we can take one question. Anyone? Clara, do you have a mic? Yes, you have. I have 10 more questions. That's not the problem.
Wow, I did not expect partners to be a quiet crowd.
There works. There's our volunteer.
Cat works for the win.
Yes. Sorry.
I think.
So, did you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. It goes that goes. So.
You can say the question. I'll repeat it so it gets.
Yeah, exactly. Just speak loud and we'll repeat it.
For such a great event. I'm really interested in the development for the AI. It's the trend topics, you know, and you see development with the OpenAI and integrating the other tools. You see the rush up the Google with the other tools, right? Is there any strategy or adaptation or any effort to get an environment? It's my imagination. To get an environment, I type my requirement one place and get some reporting, some great things from the all across Atlassian.
Yeah, great question.
So the question is, can you use OpenAI or Google Bard or something like that to talk to Atlassian whole tool suite and get intelligent answers?
Yes.
Does that? I hope that reframes that.
It's a great question. You're all going to be here this week, right? And we'll talk about a few things in the keynote, yes. Which I'm afraid I cannot share yet.
But that's probably the best answer you could give, right?
Yes, but I am personally very, very excited about what we're going to show you. And we're very much scratching the surface here. So this is going to be a quick, rapid journey that we will undertake with all of you. But yes, that's kind of the right direction to be thinking in.
I'm so excited.
So we'll all be in the keynotes. Are you going to be there? Are you going to be?
Yes, yeah.
But
I think I've done the keynote every year I've been at Atlassian. So yeah, probably.
Cool. Anu, thank you so much for your time. It was a big honor to have you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for giving me the water and being here. Cool.
Super fun. Thanks.